Hello, everyone. My name is Glacia Etheridge, and I wanted to come back on my YouTube channel, A New Comfort, to talk to you guys about my grant writing experience and my grant journey. So I'm not going to come to you today as the owner of A New Comfort, even though that's my YouTube channel. I just want to talk to you just in terms of one of the roles that I play in academia. For many of you, if you are on my LinkedIn page, you already know that I do multiple things, and I work in higher education as an associate professor. And one of the jobs that I have to play, well, one of the roles that I have to engage in is grant writing. And so I wanted to talk to you guys again today as it relates to my journey. So I have been awarded scholarship funds when I was in my master's level program through grants. And then I actually was a peer reviewer for a particular grant competition. It was a federal grant competition. And when I was in my doctoral program at the University of Maryland College Park. And that allowed me to be able to understand the grant review process. And so when you are a part of that process, you're able to look at the request for proposals, looking at what the funding agency and the criteria as it pertains to that particular funding agency, and you evaluate your peer scores as it relates for funding. Right? We don't make the final decision as a peer reviewer. The only thing that you're doing is looking at to see whether or not that particular institution or agency or whoever applied for it was able to satisfy and meet the criteria for that. And so it's not just you, it is other people who are part of that particular competition or on that panel. That's what they call it. Then when I graduated from the University of Maryland with my doctorate degree in 2012, my first job was at North Carolina A&T State University. And at that point in time, so I got hired in 2013, and when I first got hired, I think I applied for 2 or 3. Now, one was an NSF grant, which is National Science Foundation. I don't know how this person found me on campus, but they wanted me to be like the expert as it relates to disability. So one of my credentials is that of a certified rehabilitation counselor. And I also work in state vocational rehabilitation services. And I also have other areas in which I've serviced individuals with disabilities. And so I would have been the content expert as it relates to that. Then I ended up applying for a long-term training grant, Rehabilitation Services Administration long-term training grant that is funded by Department of Education. So again, I am new to the field per se in education. So I applied and then I actually got it. So first year out, got a grant. And I'll talk to you in a separate video about grant management because you're spending months and weeks for the most part trying to develop this proposal with the hopes that you would get funded. And so no one really talks to you guys about how to manage that grant once you get it. But again, that's a separate video. I wrote that down in my planner. So look for that in a subsequent video. So what happened was, I think that I had it submitted sometime in the spring of 2014. The funding year started October 1st of 2013. So that's exactly what happened. But keep in mind that I was a recipient of that particular grant fund when I was in my master's program and then also in my doctorate program, because I don't think I shared that with you. But at that point, remember, I had served as a peer reviewer. Right. The next time, throughout that process, I was awarded the opportunity to be a research fellow that is affiliated with the Langston University RRTC. And that is a post that I did that I'm no longer a fellow. I'm going to transition to being a mentor. And throughout that time, I was just very, very fortunate that I was able to establish my research agenda. And I had 2 other colleagues that were associated with that particular opportunity to be a research fellow. And I remember that in one of our meetings, there was a representative from the federal government, because I typically write for federal grants. And she was just saying about how one of the things that in order to strengthen your grantsmanship is she was encouraging us to be a peer reviewer. If you're very new to grant writing, what ends up happening, you're kind of intimidated. And if you agree with me, just make sure that you comment below or comment on LinkedIn as it relates to that. It is intimidating, to be honest. And I'm like, I don't really know. And so I left that particular conference and I just so happened to see her at the airport. And I was like, Miss Reeves, I think I want to do it. So she's like, okay, here's my contact information. Send me your CV. and whatever information that she wanted me to submit, I'm sorry. And then from there, I submitted it and I was selected as a peer reviewer. I don't know if it was like within that year, but it was very short after. Honestly, you guys, it was intimidating because I'm just like, what is this? It's one thing when you write for that competition, but it's one thing to review for it. And so I was able to go in there understanding that I did the very best that I could. I read all the applications as I was supposed to. And, I did a very good job because what's happening is you have these scores. And again, same thing with the other grant that I actually peer reviewed when I was in my master's program. So for this one, same thing, you're reading the RFP, request for proposals, you're looking at the criteria, and you're looking at each submitted application to see whether or not that individual met that criteria. And I don't think I've shared this with you. So typically throughout my journey, so I've started academia in 2013. So since 2013, I've been trying to submit grants. And sometimes in a given semester, I've submitted for 5. Sometimes I did not get funded. Sometimes I did. And typically, I'm telling you right now, and I'm going to say this very slowly because I know I speak naturally fast, keep trying. Take the reviews and the feedback. Don't take it to heart now, because sometimes we get our little feelings and just like, what are they talking about? Don't do that. Or just don't let it get to you that much, right? Take the feedback, revise and resubmit, factor into what they have to say. That is the only way that I think that many individuals are able to get funded. You're just constantly going. You're constantly trying. And it does take effort because in academia, I play more than one role. I'm a coordinator. I teach. I'm on different committees in the department, in the community, at the university level, and in my college area as well. So I'm also writing for publication. I am just doing a lot, and I sit on boards. And so I'm an academic advisor. These are some of the things that I do in addition to trying to write for these federal funds. And so this particular funding agency, which I reviewed for, I had submitted for that particular funding agency like 10 times. And so in the fall of 2022, I was actually able to be funded with one of my colleagues. So she's considered the PI, Dr. Wong, and then myself and another individual are co-PIs, but it took me 10 times. So I didn't, what's interesting is that when I've gotten on the ones that I were not as successful with, what happened was because I became a peer reviewer, I understood how they were thinking, right? And so you really, when you get ready to write a grant, you have to build a team. So typically, I've not seen it. Now, I could be totally wrong. I have very rarely seen someone submit an application. They're the only person that's on there. You have got to understand who is going to be your methodologist, what agencies are going to be participatory in this particular, for this particular project. Is it going to be you, another institution? What are the skills of these individuals? Because people will look at, okay, you're writing for this, but how are you going to manage it if you should get it? Are the people on a part of this grant, are they quote unquote qualified? Do they have the skills and the training and the expertise to be able to handle it, right? And so that's something that you really need to be able to do. So I think that once I became a peer reviewer, I was able to see things from a different perspective. So again, when we got the grant, we're actually almost at the end of our first year, and in the second year, we will have more additional information as well. So on this particular grant that I have, I am considered the qualitative expert, but then I'm also in the area of my expertise as being an individual who's certified in rehabilitation counseling, so working with individuals with disabilities. So that's what I contribute to the actual project. So those are the nuts and bolts. It's a little bit more detailed, but I wanted to make sure that I came back to you as it relates to this. And so again, when I was a part of the LURRTC grant that was afforded to me by Dr. Corey Moore at Langston University, it has really been a journey. And I'm very proud that he recognized my hard work and asked me to be a mentor. So now I think coming up for this next cycle, probably in the fall, that I will now help other assistant professors or junior faculty to be able to cultivate their research and definitely their grantsmanship, because I have been able to be funded. Now, do I have 10 years of grantsmanship? I do not. But it only takes that one time. And I want to go back to where I got funded the first time in when I first got out of my doctorate program. Sorry, I'm a little bit tired. I challenged myself. I said, Glacia, I just needed to make sure there wasn't just a fluke. Like, okay, you get this time. Like, I didn't want to be a one-hit wonder. So when I tell you grantsmanship and me going to bed 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, don't really recommend it. But people who've written grants, they know, that you are up and you're not getting sleep, in addition to all the other things that you have going on. And people have personal lives. I really do have one, right? And so I want to make sure, for me personally, that I wasn't fluke. I submitted for a same competition for the previous grant that I actually had, and I didn't get it. I applied for, that one. I applied again, I didn't get it. I was like, why? I was in my feelings. I was like, well, why did I not get it? Or I looked at the feedback and I was just like, okay. So I'm going to try it again. If I don't get this again, then I'm going to move on to something else. So when I applied for it again, that's the time I applied for, I think it was like 4 or 5 in that period, right? So I was the PI, which is the principal investigator, and some of it I was the co-PI, right? Or meaning that I was still helping some capacity, or I just could be a part of the project staff, but maybe not give so much of my time towards the actual the roles and responsibilities as it relates to someone who's a PI or a co-PI. So if you want to know more information about PI, co-PIs, and project personnel, then just inbox me and I'll try to clarify that a little bit more. But what I wanted to say is that out of those 4 or 5 grants, I was able to hit the one that I was a PI over, right? But again, no one sees the backside of it, about how to manage everything when you're actually writing. And so the one grant that I got in the fall of 2022 is more research, because that's where I wanted to challenge myself too. I'm really all about transitioning youth with disabilities, but I'm also very passionate about ex-offenders and their employability once they are released, or individuals who are formerly incarcerated, I should say. I try to be very cognizant of the words and the language that I use. But those are the tidbits. So in summation, if you are someone who's seeking grant funding, if you did not get funded the first time, keep trying. If you need to hire someone as a consultant, make sure they are very familiar with the grant writing process. If you're able to sit as a peer reviewer, definitely make sure that you do that, because that means you can get a good understanding of how the reviewers are reviewing the application in of itself, and how participants who are actually applying for the grant, what they're looking for, how they address the criteria, if that makes sense. Don't take it personal when it comes to the actual feedback. Collaborate with other institutions or agencies. That would just really be my next best thing that I would tell you. And just keep persevering in things of that nature. Those, again, are my little tidbits. Those are things that I've used. I've never submitted a grant by myself. I barely even write a publication by myself, because sometimes it just gets a little bit too much. And I hope that this inspires you. I hope it encourages you. And I forgot to tell you that if you, like, some people are like, well, how do I find, what these funding agencies are? Just look, ask questions. And then once you, like for the Department of Education, Department of Agriculture, whoever have these grants, sometimes they will send out information, right? And so get on those listservs. That would be another thing that I should say. Also, the agency sometimes will post the awardees, the institution, and give you a brief blurb or the abstract of the funded project. And so you're able to see the types of things that are funded. That's just utilizing your skills in terms of looking at what, again, has been funded, and then how they may not go into the tidbits and looking at their whole grant in its scope. At least I don't think so. If they do, then actually do it. But if you are going to reference it, don't copy someone's stuff. Just don't, because it's not nice. And it's probably really unethical. And so people have really worked very, very hard on the grants and things of that nature. So sometimes when you're looking at these journal articles, sometimes it says that this project was supported by the funding agency in X, Y, and Z, because typically, especially on those research grants, they are writing publications as relates to that. So that's why you actually see that. But those are my little tidbits for right now. Definitely email me. You can inbox me if you are watching this on LinkedIn. If not, you can email me at anewcomfort.com. And I'll probably create a separate video for A New Comfort as it relates to stress management when you are grant writing and grant managing. But definitely look out for another video as it relates to grant management, because I don't have my binders with me. So I will have to show you the method to my madness. However, my project officer usually tells me that I write a very good report. So I will make sure that I give you those tools for you that I have been able to do. And if you are a grant writer, please make sure you share your feedback. I would love to be able to engage with a dialogue with you, and hopefully others will see those tips and tricks as well. But as always, I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the day and keep writing.